Welcome to Thought Frontier.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah, welcome back.
Today we're looking at something
Mm-hmm.
really interesting and kind of mind-bending.
Yeah.
It's all about how AI is shaking things up in the world of science,
Uh-huh.
which is exciting, but also kind of scary.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there.
Exactly.
Like on the one hand, you've got this incredible potential for like groundbreaking discoveries.
Right.
But on the flip side,
Yeah.
there's this risk of what we call illusions of understanding.
Illusions of understanding. Okay, so that sounds...
That's deep. It's like a mirage, you know? You think you're seeing this oasis of knowledge, but is it really there?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break this down.
Okay, so think about it like this.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about some far-off sci-fi scenario. This is happening right now.
Really?
Yeah, even at like the highest levels of science.
Wow. Okay, give me an example.
Well, look at the 2024 Nobel Prizes.
The Nobels.
Both chemistry and physics awards had something to do with AI.
Huh. Interesting.
And one of the winners even said that AI is one of the most transformative technologies in human history.
Wow.
Because of its potential for scientific discovery.
Okay, so that sounds super promising, but you said there's a catch.
Right. There's always a catch. The thing is, AI can kind of create this illusion.
Yeah.
Like, it can make us think we understand something way more deeply than we actually do.
Okay, so like a false sense of knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because AI can predict something really well doesn't mean it acts the way they do.
So it's like having a magic 8-ball that always gives you the right answer.
Yeah.
But you have no idea how it actually works.
Exactly. Or, like, imagine a supercomputer that can predict the weather perfectly.
Uh-huh.
But it has zero clue about, atmospheric pressure or wind patterns.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So how does this illusion actually play out in real-world science?
Let's talk about AlphaFold.
AlphaFold, right? I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's this AI that won a Nobel Prize for predicting the shapes of proteins.
Right, which is huge in biology and medicine.
Exactly. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Just because AlphaFold can predict those shapes
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean it actually understands like the intricate dance of molecules and energy that actually goes into creating them.
It's like having a recipe that tells you exactly how to bake a cake.
Right.
But you have no idea like what makes the cake rise.
Yeah.
Or why certain ingredients work together.
Exactly. And that's the danger. We might mistake AI's predictive power for real understanding.
Right.
And end up with this like false confidence in its insights.
Okay, so we've got AI spitting out these groundbreaking discoveries,
Uh-huh.
but it might not truly grasp the why behind them.
Right.
That's kind of unsettling, right?
It is a little bit.
Especially when you consider that scientists at the very top of their game
Yeah.
can be fooled by these illusions.
Exactly. So what does that mean for the rest of us?
Right. I mean, if the experts are falling for it,
Yeah.
what hope do we have?
It's a big question, especially when you think about how much of the information we consume is already filtered through algorithms and AI.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like we're outsourcing our thinking to these machines
Yeah.
without even realizing what we might be missing.
Exactly. And that brings us to another illusion.
Okay, hit me with it.
This one we call the illusion of exploratory breadth.
Exploratory breadth. Okay, I'm listening.
It's this trap of thinking that we're exploring all the possibilities, when in reality, the AI tools we're using are actually limiting the scope of our inquiry.
I see what you mean. So the tools themselves, even though they're powerful,
Yeah,
are actually shaping the kinds of questions we're even asking.
that's right. And that's dangerous because we might be missing out on crucial discoveries or perspectives simply because our AI tools haven't been programmed to even consider them.
Okay, so that's 2 illusions down.
Uh-huh.
What's next?
Let's talk about bias.
Oh, yeah, AI bias. That's a big one.
Yeah, we tend to think of AI as this objective force.
Right, pure logic and all that.
Right. But is that really the case?
Well, I'm guessing you're going to say no.
Not really. See, AI is built by humans.
Uh-huh.
And it's trained on data that's collected by humans.
Right.
So any biases that are present in those humans or in the data they collect will inevitably end up in the AI itself.
It's like baking a cake with spoiled milk.
Yeah.
No matter how good your recipe is, the cake is going to taste off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even if an AI looks super slick and sophisticated,
Uh-huh.
it could be hiding all sorts of biases.
Right, and those biases could be skewing the results.
Exactly. And that has huge implications when we're talking about things like medical diagnoses or scientific research.
Absolutely. It's not just about the tech itself.
Right.
It's about the context.
Exactly.
And the people behind it.
Exactly.
This is making me think about all this hype around cheaper and faster science.
Uh-huh.
It seems like everyone's obsessed with automating research
Yeah.
and using AI to churn out papers as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and while the idea of like rapid scientific progress is understandable,
Right.
there's a real danger in prioritizing quantity over quality.
Yeah, I mean, science is about carefully designing experiments,
Yeah.
meticulously collecting data,
Right.
and rigorously analyzing results.
It's not a factory.
Exactly.
You can't just crank up the speed and expect the same level of precision and insight.
There's this company that's making headlines,
Yeah, I think I know the one.
claiming to have built an AI scientist that can write research papers.
Yeah, I saw
They're
that.
like $15 a pop.
I mean, it's an interesting idea, but
It's like a scientific content mill.
yeah, and the risk here is that we end up drowning in a sea of superficial research.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Right.
Except a haystack is constantly growing exponentially.
Exactly. Where real scientific breakthroughs get buried under a mountain of AI-generated noise.
So what happens to public trust in science?
Yeah, that's a big concern.
When research starts to feel like a mass-produced commodity?
Yeah.
I mean, people are already skeptical of scientific findings.
Yeah, and if we're not careful, it could make it even harder to address these like complex challenges like climate change or pandemics.
No, right. Because who do you trust
Yeah.
when the science itself feels unreliable?
Right. And that's why this whole conversation about AI and science is so important.
It really is.
Right.
It feels like we're at a crossroads
Yeah.
with all this amazing potential on one hand, but these serious risks on the other.
It's about finding that balance.
Right. Finding a way to harness the power of AI
Yeah.
without losing sight of what makes science so valuable in the first place.
Exactly. This whole thing about AI and science, it's all happened in a time when public trust in science is already kind of shaky.
That's true. I mean, look what happened with the whole trust the science thing during the pandemic.
Exactly. It just shows how quickly things can go downhill when people start doubting scientific institutions and expertise.
Right. Like, who are you supposed to trust if you don't even understand how the science is being done?
And that's what makes this whole AI thing even trickier. If AI starts calling the shots in research and people already have doubts about science, well, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, it could create even more skepticism and distrust, especially if people start to think that research is being controlled by algorithms or corporations with their own agenda.
It's a real worry, and it kind of highlights the need for what we call a new social contract for science in this AI age.
Okay, a new social contract for science. That sounds pretty serious. What exactly does that mean?
Well, for one thing, we got to move away from this obsession with speed and efficiency. Science isn't some race to the finish line.
Right, it's about careful observation,
Yeah.
rigorous experimentation, and open debate.
Exactly. And we got to make sure that AI is used to enhance that process, not replace it completely.
So instead of churning out papers as fast as possible,
Right.
it's about using AI to ask better questions, conduct better experiments,
Exactly.
and get a deeper understanding of the world.
Precisely. And we also need to think about the ethics of all this. Like, who decides what research gets done? Who owns the data that AI is trained on? How do we make sure the benefits are shared fairly?
Those are big questions.
Yeah.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of rules for science in the age of AI.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, but it's a conversation we need to have now.
Before it's too late.
Right. We need to set clear ethical guidelines, promote transparency, and make sure everyone has a say in how these technologies are developed and used.
Especially given all the global challenges we're facing right now, climate change, inequality, pandemics. These are massive, complex problems.
I mean, that's where AI's limitations become really clear.
What do you mean?
Well, AI is great at crunching numbers and finding patterns, but it often struggles with context nuance, the kind of big picture thinking we need to tackle these problems.
It's like trying to understand a whole painting
Right.
by just looking at tiny little squares of color.
Exactly. You miss the whole picture. And that's why we need human judgment, empathy, and a real understanding of the social and ethical implications of science.
So AI can be a powerful tool,
Definitely.
but it can't replace human intelligence and wisdom.
Absolutely not.
This whole idea of a new social contract for science,
Yeah.
it suggests that scientists can't just figure this out on their own right.
Of course not. This has got to be a conversation that involves the public, too.
We need to be informed citizens asking questions, demanding transparency.
Exactly. We can't just leave these decisions to a small group of experts.
It's got to be a collaborative effort.
Right. We need to empower people to engage with these complex issues, make science more accessible, and build trust between scientists and the public.
That sounds like a tall order.
Yeah. It is a challenge, but I think it's one we can overcome if we work together.
Okay, so we've talked about the need for a new social contract, transparency, ethics, public engagement. But how do we actually make this happen? What are some concrete steps we can take?
That's a fantastic question.
It's got me thinking, all this talk about AI and science.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder about, the impact on science reporting.
Oh, that's interesting.
How does that fit into this whole issue of trust and understanding?
It's a really good point because science journalism plays this crucial role. It's like the bridge between the scientific world and the public.
Right.
But now with AI in the mix,
Yeah.
it's getting tougher to tell the difference between real reporting and AI-generated stuff.
Right, because AI can churn out articles that sound super convincing,
Yeah,
but they might not be based on actual evidence.
exactly. And it's not just about misinformation. It's also about how AI is affecting the quality of science journalism itself.
Oh, interesting. In what way?
Well, think about it with these AI tools that can write basic news articles or summarize research papers.
Uh-huh.
There's a chance that news outlets might start relying on those tools.
So instead of hiring experienced science journalists.
Exactly.
Wow, so instead of getting in-depth reporting,
Right.
we end up with these, shallow AI-generated articles.
Yeah, just spitting out facts without any real insight or explanation.
It's all about clicks and headlines.
Right. And that just feeds into this illusion of understanding that we've been talking about.
It's like people think you're getting informed,
Yeah,
but they're really just getting this, AI-filtered version of the story.
exactly. And that's where human editors and fact checkers become so important.
To make sure the AI isn't leading us astray.
Exactly. We need people who can look at that AI content with the critical eye,
Yeah.
make sure it's accurate and add the context and analysis that makes it meaningful.
It sounds like we need, a whole new set of skills,
Yeah.
both for science journalists and for people who read science news.
Absolutely. We need journalists who not only understand the science,
Right.
but also get the limitations of AI,
Yeah.
recognizing bias and being able to tell a story that's engaging but also accurate.
And as readers, we got to be more careful about what we're reading online.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to know how to spot AI-generated content,
Right.
how to figure out if a source is credible,
Uh-huh.
and how to ask the right questions about the information we're seeing.
This whole conversation, it really highlights how important critical thinking is.
It is, and not just for scientists using AI,
Right.
but for all of us as we navigate this world where information is increasingly coming from algorithms.
It's like AI is this incredible tool,
It is.
but we can't let it do our thinking for us.
Absolutely not. We have to stay curious, ask questions, and never stop learning.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
AI's potential to revolutionize science, the risks involved, the illusions it can create,
The need for a new social contract for science in this AI age.
transparency, ethics, public engagement. It's a lot.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting.
It is. So what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing is to stay curious, ask questions, and never stop learning. AI is here to stay, and it's going to keep changing the world, but we get to shape how that happens. So let's make sure we're using AI for good.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
No.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and science.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of knowledge.